Chris Kelsey. I'm with the Barnstable Police Department. I'm the Consumer Affairs Officer with the Barnstable Police Department in the town of Barnstable. And what that means is I am the liaison to the licensing authority for the town of Barnstable. I want to thank all of you for being here and to introduce you to Erin Logan, who is our licensing director. Erin has been in this position now for several months. She was working in the office for a long time before that, and she's doing an incredible job for the town and for you. She's a huge advocate for everybody who's sitting in this room. So with that being said, I'm going to introduce Erin and let this program get started.
Thanks, Chris. All right, welcome. I love speaking in front of big groups, said no one ever. Just wanted to kind of mention that the licensing authority members are here. This is our second annual meeting under my time here. We are including off and on-premise licensees this year. Last year it was just on-premise and it was through Zoom, so it's kind of nice to see everybody in a big room together. As Chris had stated, I've been with the town for about 7 years now, but in historic, so some of you know me from the Historical Commission and Old Kings Highway. This is definitely a different animal, but it's a great challenge. I'm excited about it. I'm excited to have Jamie Binyenda here from the ABCC. He's going to start it off. He does have some scheduling conflicts, so I'm going to let him kind of take it over and any questions that you have of him, and then Chris and I will take over the rest of the presentation. All righty?
Thanks, Erin. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Jamie Binyenda. I'm an investigator with the Alcoholic Beverage Control Commission. I've been in that role for almost 22 years now. I've been coming to these for, I think, 17 years back when Sean Sweeney used to do them years ago at the police station. So I've gotten to meet many of you. And it's unique, I can tell you. Of the 351 municipalities in the state, there's only a handful that have events like this. And I know it's tough, especially for those of you that have, busy lives with your business. And, I certainly appreciate everybody being here. Just to go over a few things. Years ago, I used to get into the Liquor Control Act, which is Mass General Law, Chapter 138. And I would, within 3 minutes, everybody's eyes would glaze over. I would have to wake up a couple people in the back. And, I'm not going to do that. So I try to change it up a little bit, try to keep it interesting, try to give you a reason why we're here. What is the main reason? But for those of you that don't know, if you ever have any questions and you wanted to reference the Liquor Control Act, like I said, it's Chapter 138. It's on our website, which is mass.gov/ABCC, and as well as our regulations, which are under 204 CMR. Two of them I just want to go over quickly that I assume everybody knows, but the first two would be Mass General Law, Chapter 138, Section 34 and 34C. This deals with underage service or sale or delivery to an underage. I think everyone knows that you have to be 21 years of age to purchase alcohol in the state. The only reason I mention this is because not too far from here, not in Barnstable, but another town in the Cape, fairly recently we had gone to this establishment and they sold to a 16-year-old girl who had everything but a Hello Kitty shirt on. She looked 12 to me. And when I had told the clerk, like, well, you got to make sure, she didn't check the ID. There was no ID checked or anything like that. And the response was, well, she looked 18. I said, okay, well, we've got two problems. Number one, the drinking age is 21. That changed back in, I believe, 1984. And she's 16, not 18. So, it's just, I only mention that because, we will be doing compliance checks coming up. I really don't like doing them. It's when we send an underage individual into an establishment to try to get served. I can tell you, I pick the kids for the Cape. So I don't pick the 6'4" kid with a full beard. I would never do that to anybody. I pick very young looking people, and to pass, all you have to do is say, do you have an ID? And you've passed. So when we do them, they'll be coming up shortly. I can't give you an exact date. It's a little, I'm giving you all the answers to the test, but I can't tell you when the test is. But it's really very simple. Just ask for an ID. It's not, again, these are young kids. So the other one that I bring up is probably, so 34 and 34C are, longer statutes. They're about a paragraph each. But Section 69, that's the statute. It's probably the shortest statute you'll ever read in Mass General Law. And the only reason I bring this up is because whenever we find a place that overserves somebody, I always get, well, they're not driving. And as you can see, it says nothing in there about driving. Years ago out in Central Mass in a small town, myself and my partner had gone in, and this guy was clearly intoxicated and was served. And when we addressed the bartender and we got the guy to sit down and got him a couple glasses of water, and this is before the days of Uber, so we had to get a taxi out to a small town in Central Mass. It took a little while. But the bartender's excuse was, oh, he doesn't drive. He lives a mile down the way, and he walks the train tracks home at night. And I said, well, is that supposed to make me feel better? That you're sending this guy out on, seems like a daily basis. Everybody knew him in the place. And he's walking train tracks home at, midnight, 1 in the morning. So I just mention this because this is something that I spend a lot of time on, is overservice of alcohol. And it's not as if we just go in and say, that guy's intoxicated, we're writing you up. We have to first formulate the opinion that they're visibly intoxicated and then see an additional service. That can take a while. And that also, these are visible signs of intoxication. These aren't people that are blowing a .08. They're much higher than that. So I just ask you, especially the on-premise establishments, to really make sure that you're checking for sobriety. And you're having a meeting with your staff regularly to address this issue, and even the liquor store owners as well. As you can see, it mentions nothing in here about just pouring establishments. It also affects your license as well. So, all right. So I wanted to ask, and usually there's very few answers, but why do you guys think we have these meetings? Anyone? No one? Huh? Exactly, yep. And I remember a couple of years ago, there was a gentleman here who said, he just had a really optimistic view of things. He said, I view it as almost like a pep rally before the busy season starts. And I thought, wow, that's a great way to look at it, because I know most people are never happy to see me, and I really appreciated that. So, but I think that's a good way to look at it. Like, you're getting ready for your busy season, and you're going to have I'm assuming a lot of you will have new staff on hand that you'll have to train, and I believe me, I sympathize with you on that it's difficult, and you're only as strong as your weakest link. So, but another reason I like to look at it is the U.S. Supreme Court has deemed 4 industries as what's called pervasively regulated. It's kind of good news, bad news for you guys. Unfortunately, you're one of them, liquor sales. The good news is you're not running a mine in West Virginia. Most of you are running nice places on Cape Cod. So, you can see the others are not as enjoyable. I think you picked, if you're going to pick a pervasively regulated industry, you pick the one that you can probably have the most enjoyment out of. Although some of your, not necessarily in Barnstable, but I've been to several liquor storage rooms that it seems like I'm going into a mine. I don't know how the heck you guys get the alcohol down there, but good luck to you. Now, when the pandemic hit, I saw this meme on the internet. I'm not a big fan of memes. I don't like how people kind of portray them as scholarly work. But this one kind of hit the nail on the head, and it had a little truth to it. And because when people were locked down, we saw this giant increase in alcohol consumption. It was not a good mix. And you can see, so far, we're still getting some of the numbers out. I'm waiting to see what numbers come out after this year, but you can see there was a 66% increase in alcohol consumption since 2000. 25% increase in the number of deaths involving alcohol between 2019 and 2020, and drunk driving deaths increased by 14%. This was the largest increase we've seen in 20 years. So this certainly, I don't want to beat it to death, but the pandemic did have obviously a lot of negative aspects to it, and alcohol consumption and all of the ills that go along with alcohol, we've seen a big increase. So I just wanted to kind of give you guys that, just something to keep your mind on. This slide is a little dated. I've been trying to get updated one from the Barnstable County Substance Abuse Council. And it's kind of changed a little, the numbers, but there's always peaks and valleys within substance abuse. And one thing that always kind of remains steady is alcohol. And as you can see from this slide, and this was just a few years ago, this was before the pandemic, that 71% of all substance abuse-related deaths in Barnstable County were attributed to alcohol. So clearly more than any other substance. Couple other things just about Barnstable County. 8% of the population on the Cape is addicted to alcohol. That's more than any other substance combined. 21% of adults on Cape Cod drink heavily. That's the highest amongst the 14 counties in the state. It's not a title we want to hold, I don't think. I thought Franklin County would have beat us, but they didn't. And as far as underage drinking, I always get this as well, like, oh, I'm old enough to serve in the military, why can't I drink? Well, you're trying to talk to an 18-year-old kid on the corner about brain development and science behind it. It doesn't usually go well. But the biggest stat that it's ever jumped off the page for me is, if you look at 40% of kids that begin drinking in their mid-teens will become alcoholics. If they wait till they're 21, that drops to 7%. And if they wait till they're 25, it drops even lower. So I just bring that up as something because I'm a parent, first and foremost. And, I try to, my kids are young, but, pretty soon they'll be in high school and college and dealing with these issues. And I always just try to address it with them in a way that they can understand. But I think it's important for parents to understand this too. And then if you look also, there's 696,000 students are assaulted each year by another who's been drinking. There's 97 reports of, this is on colleges, of alcohol-related sexual assault or date rape, and that involves alcohol. Again, these numbers are far higher than other drugs. I think we've become as a society kind of numb to alcohol. I think that, we take it a little lightly, and not that I'm advocating that everybody leave and become a teetotaler or something like that. I'm not saying that. I'm just that people need to look at it for what it is, because we don't see the actual stats. And you can see that first one, 75 to 80% of all violent crimes involve alcohol. Clearly way above anything else. Alcohol in this country is 140,000 deaths. I think that number is low. I think there's a lot that's not attributed to alcohol that kind of slide through. I know this from my extended family, that their death certificate didn't say alcohol, but I know them, and I know that it probably should have been mentioned. It cost again, a low estimate of $250 billion. And if you look down at the bottom, you can see among violent crime, the offender is far more likely to have been drinking alcohol than under the influence of other drugs. I'm not going to get too much into this, but one thing that we know, and there's been a lot of studies done, that alcohol control works. So having these seminars, reaching out to you guys when there's an issue, we know that these things work. We've seen already with our compliance checks, because we didn't do them during the pandemic. It was kind of hard to ask a parent, hey, can I borrow your teenager to send them into 30 bars tonight? They didn't really want them to do that in the height of it. So, but what we've seen so far, and we just started about a month ago, month and a half, the state failure rate for compliance checks used to be around 2 to 3%. It's now above 10%. So it increased. Again, these are kids going in to buy. Like, they don't look old. I can't stress that enough. But one thing that we know, too, is that there isn't enough exposure within the press in regards to the problems that alcohol causes in our society. You can see that even just the mention of violent crime involving alcohol, you see an increase in the community response to that, to where they want more regulation, which I'll get into that a little later. So there is high public support, believe it or not. I didn't know this. This just came out. A recent study by the Center for Alcohol and Policy found that 87% of the U.S. public support alcohol regulation. If you came out with me to work at night, you would never believe this, because I don't get many friendly faces. But you know, this was, I thought, pretty remarkable, and it was nonpartisan. Which, what issue can we say today is nonpartisan? You know, so I was extremely happy to read this study. And again, this isn't, when I say alcohol regulation, you know, it's such a clunky term. We really focus, I can tell you this from my agency, my chief, he comes from the alcohol industry, from the hospitality industry. And we really try our best to handle things as best we can. My 22 years, I've given way more warnings than I have violation, not even close. So we try to reach out and work with folks as best we can, and then focus on where the problems are. I know that 85% of the license holders throughout Massachusetts are regular folks running a business, doing their thing, and we try to treat everybody that way. So there's another study that came out along with that one was, how can you fix some of these problems within communities that have high alcohol use? And clearly we know we have that on Cape Cod. Some of the things is mobilize community members, engage with members of the hospitality industry, something we're doing today, analyze problems and develop solutions, develop a comprehensive set of measures designed to curb problems, engage with policymakers, understand that it takes time, but positive change can come if we all work together. You've seen this, again, let's go pre-pandemic, on the decrease in underage alcohol before the pandemic. There's been a dramatic decrease since the early 80s. And the amount that kids drink, how many kids drink, it's really quite remarkable. And I think a lot of that goes to groups like MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, and different advocacy groups that have stepped up. So I just end with this quote about community. I know it's kind of corny to some, and that's fine. You can make fun of me. I get called every name in the book. But you know, it says the greatness of a community is most accurately measured by the compassionate actions of its members. And I say this because if you see somebody, you know, if you're running a business, and you know, maybe you guys obviously have, you know, some of you have strict policies where you're not going to have somebody come into the establishment that's intoxicated, you don't want to deal with it. I get it. That's a great policy to have. But just, if you can, and you can't always, I know that. I do it every night. You can't always get through to folks that are drinking. But if you can, try to get them a ride home. Try to talk to them. Give them some water. Give them something to kind of relax them, you know, if they're on your establishment. Don't just push them out the door and say, they're no longer my problem, because quite frankly, they are. They're all of our problems. You know, my family rides on these roads as all of your families do as well. So I just want to, again, I've got to get to another event, but I always leave my information. If you ever have any questions, it's on the website. You don't need to write it down. But, you know, feel free to reach out. I always tell people, you know, there's no harm in calling and asking. We're not there to catch people. That's not our job. Our job is to regulate the industry and create a level playing field. So please reach out. I live on the Cape. I don't work here that often, unfortunately, but it's a nice night when I only have a half-hour commute as opposed to driving home at 1 in the morning from Pittsfield. That's never fun. But if you do need anything, if you're new to the industry and you're just getting started, I know a lot of you have been in the business for a very long time, and you know all this, but every year there's a turnaround. And if you do need any help with anything, please don't hesitate to call. Okay. Does anyone have any questions? Quiet group today, huh? All right. No, thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
All right, Aaron is going to do our presentation. A lot of that will be overlapped a little bit, which is okay. And ours obviously is tailored a little bit closer to what's happening here in the town of Barnstable. A couple of things I just wanted to touch on as Jamie left. We are going to be doing compliance checks. We have done compliance checks. And unlike Jamie, I like doing the compliance checks for several reasons. One, I get to meet all of you. I got to meet a lot of you that I didn't know over the last couple of years. And second of all, I would say 85 to 90% of the time, everyone's doing what they're supposed to be doing. And that's incredible, because that means that you guys are doing what you're supposed to be doing. That means that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing and helping you to learn these things. And the education component of what we do is working. That's what we strive for. We're not trying to go out there and catch you doing something. We're trying to make sure that you actually know what you're supposed to be doing and that you're actually doing it. And that's incredible. And you guys should give yourself a round of applause for that, because more often than not, everyone in this room is doing what they're supposed to be doing, and that's what we look for.
So I apologize that some of you are standing and that I had a seat while some did not. It is not how I like to operate. So if there's a couple seats up here, if anybody would like to have a seat. Okay. Okay, all right. So we're going to go over the licensing rules and regulations, a little bit about inspections and compliance. The ABCC piece was obviously taken out of order, and then we'll have some questions. So ideally, if you have any questions, you can hold them to the end unless it's something that you really can't wait on, and I'm happy to entertain questions as we go. Oh, why is this not working? Okay. All right. So a copy of, which I of course do not have with me, a copy of the rules and regs must be on the licensed premise at all times. It's the little blue books in the back. If you don't have one, please take one. They are also available on the licensing division webpage. The book is about 50 pages, but what really pertains to you is the first section, the alcohol section, common victulars, and entertainment if you have entertainment. All employees should be reading the rules and should be complying. So anytime you have a new server who's handling alcohol, anytime you have someone new in your store who is selling alcohol, they really should be familiar with the rules. Again, this is not, we're not talking a large volume of reading here. It should be a light read in your free time on your lunch break. Come on. Why does this not wanna? Okay. Each business should be maintaining a list of their current employees. This is something that Officer Kelsey will be checking when he does his compliance checks. Same thing with the entertainers, which I've kind of come to learn being new in this role. It's actually good because things are coming up that maybe had been so standard in the past that folks forgot about, but entertainers should be listed as your list of employees as well. So if you use the same DJ, the same band, we just want to make sure that you have note of that and can pull that out if need be. Posting of all of your licenses. We are not looking at your food service licenses and permits, but certainly those need to be posted as well. Everyone in here should have this poster. There is a larger poster that unfortunately I don't have access of at this time. that also gets into Mass General Law. If you don't have 2 posters and your licenses, please let me know. We'll make sure that you get what you need. But those should be posted in a conspicuous location along with your alcohol and your entertainment licenses. All right, so if there are any dress code requirements in your establishment, you must have a sign at the entrance specifying the requirements of that restriction. If you're having a cover charge, a sign must be posted at every entrance, and the sign must state the minimum coverage, cover charge, and the amount of the charge. All right. Important to remind that we cannot discriminate based on race, color, religious creed, national origin, sex, sexual orientation, physical or mental disability, or ancestry. Thank you, Chris. And you may regulate the admission to minors on the premise, as, you know, if the premise has rules that are posted. So if you have a bar, you're gonna most of you have a food license as well, so we expect that you're gonna have family in that establishment. Just thank you, Chris. Here's a copy of the Blue Book, again, on the back table. I have plenty of copies upstairs, so if we run out, please hit me up before you leave. Okay. Oh, sorry. Okay, entrance and refusal. You may refuse entrance to anyone who appears to be intoxicated or unruly. This is probably, perhaps Chris would agree, this is one of your biggest tools to use. Just don't let them onto your premise if they are coming and they're tripping and they're giving visual signs of intoxication. Just don't let them onto your premise. If you do, we do ask that you do call the police. That's important. That's our job. That's what they're there for, to assist with that. Better to mitigate the problem before it expands out into the community. And with that being said, you would offer that individual assistance, whether it's you're calling them a cab or guiding them home with whomever they came with, but they should be escorted off the property. There we go. All right, occupancy. So every room on your licensed premise should have a sign noting the occupancy for that specific room. I think I get into this in the next slide. We have now kind of all gotten on the same permitting system. So the health department, the building department, myself, we are all on the same system. So now we are able to see what the building department gives you as an occupancy number versus what the health department gives you for a seat count based on your grease trap capacity, and then what your alcohol license actually states for that number. Your license should actually state the capacity of the grease trap. So if you're a common victualler, those numbers should match what the health department has. We are working through that this year, and I imagine by next year we should all kind of be on the same page. This is not to be confused with the maximum allowable occupancy set by the building commissioner. So the building commissioner might say you can have 200 occupants, but your license, you might only be cleared for, say, 66 seats. So keep in mind that those numbers are very different for a reason, and I'm happy to direct you to the right departments if you have any questions regarding that. Same kind of, again, talking about the occupancy versus seat count. And again, the seat count is regulated mostly in part by the health department, and then should trickle down to your alcohol license. Okay, tips training is required every 3 years. We ask for tips training, but it can be another state-sponsored training that is similar to tips. That's okay, but it's important that your alcohol managers and bartenders and those individuals who come in contact with the alcohol have had the proper training. We also, with that, you would have in-house training that's required by all employees. And then just that last piece at the end, just to make sure that the individuals who have been trained, that you have that information available for inspection. Crowd control manager. So any establishment with an occupancy of more than 100 must have formal training through the Mass Department of Fire Services. The certification should be present at the time of the compliance check and should be available 24/7. Okay. The operations. Not permitted to lock the front door until the last patron has exited the premises. All premises should be kept clean and sanitary. Patrons and guests are not allowed on the premise prior to opening or after closing. The hours of operation. Excuse me. So the patrons are allowed on the premises during the hours that are listed on your license. This has come up a little bit in my time. If you are not operating within the hours that are posted on your license and you know you're going to keep this a permanent part of your plan, you will need to submit an application to amend your hours. That would be approved by both the local board and the ABCC. This is not done as a punishment, you're just expected to be operating within these days. Anything more than, I'm gonna halt there because that's coming up. But no patrons allowed to enter, drink food, or be served after hours. Employees will be allowed 1 hour after closing, but only when cleaning. And the premises should disperse in an orderly fashion. So if you're closing late and you have a large group of people that have been enjoying your music, your alcohol, and your entertainment, we want to try to keep those crowds, remind them that they're going out into neighborhoods and we shouldn't be continuing the party out in the streets. All right, the sale of alcohol. We ask that you maintain a schedule of prices effective for not less than 1 calendar week. So obviously those prices might fluctuate, particularly in the summer, but you do need to have those posted. Do not sell or offer pitchers to less than 2 persons in a party at a time. Allow or encourage drinking games or alcoholic prizes. And no coupons or discounted deals towards the purchase of alcohol. We ask that you don't offer or deliver free drinks, deliver more than 2 drinks to any one person at a time, or deliver or serve to an intoxicated person. Okay, this is just a reminder on food tastings. The 1 ounce of wine, 2 ounces of malt, a 1/4 ounce of cordial or liqueurs, and all other drinks is subject should be limited to a 1/4 of an ounce. Excuse me. All right, so we're talking record of deliveries, including kegs. Must have a permit from the ABCC to deliver. You must keep your name, ID, expiration date, and address of every delivery. The record must include what was delivered, date, time, and signature of every recipient, and maintained for at least 1 year from the last entry available. And the outdoor dining. Okay, this is an exciting one. So, some of you are taking advantage, or you have a location that you're able to take advantage of some outdoor seating. Just a reminder, they should not be used for the sole purposes of hanging out and having a drink. Food should be served with the drink. I think you all know if you're on town property, you might need a town property, an agreement with the town to use that piece. And if not, this is the last year you can use the COVID-related restrictions or the allowances that were put in place by the state. Those will expire March 31st of 2024. So if you have outdoor dining, if you want outdoor dining, at this point, your first step would be to approach site plan review. You would need a certified site plan. and we could get your license through that process, you would need to apply to the local board, approval by the ABCC to amend your premise description. And then that would be a permanent change moving forward. Back to, sorry, the COVID-related restrictions that we still have in place. Handicapped accessibility. So all parking lots for customers or visitors should have accessible spaces for vehicles with proper identification. There should be permanent sign at each space showing the accessible symbol. Van accessible spaces should have an additional sign below. All right. And, finally, if your handicap parking space does not have a sign, it is not compliant. I would encourage you to reach out to our office, and I will put you in touch with the folks that can get you situated there. All right. Injuries to persons on the premises. Do not make bodily contact with patrons unless to protect other patrons or themselves. Again, the licensees will call the police if there is an issue on the premise. And you must call an ambulance if necessary to assist anyone that is injured. I don't know that there have been many instances, but I know it's a hard call to make when your business is at stake. But it's an important call to make, and you don't want to be held responsible. Inside or outside the premise, okay. Noise, excessive noise, disturbances, misconduct, and disorder are potential violations of your license. If you have any concerns that is your entertainment too loud, I guarantee you your abutters will let us know. And if you have any questions, again, that is what we are here for. All right, illegal activity. Will make any reasonable effort that there will be no illegal activity, frequently monitoring bathrooms, calling the police for assistance. And closing hours. All alcohol containers must be removed no later than 15 minutes after the posted closing time on the license. No alcoholic drinks may be served after the legal hour for sale. And all patrons must be off premise within 30 minutes after closing. Employees must be off premise within 60 minutes after closing, except as allowed by law. And I do believe that they ask if there is certain circumstances where you're going to be in the shop till 3 a.m. cleaning because you have a party to set up for tomorrow. Give the licensing office a call that day, the day before, so that we can alert the law enforcement that, yes, we understand that there are going to be folks on site a little bit longer than usual. If you're closing for any period longer than 3 weeks, longer than 30 days, you must submit a letter to the licensing division with the dates of the closing and the reason why. We certainly have establishments that shut down every year, and they communicate that accordingly. I think some folks may just need the reminder. If you're shutting down for renovations, if you're shutting down for cleaning, we completely understand that. Communicate. Rather have too much information than not enough information. All right, so this is duration longer than 2 weeks. It's 30 days. Duration longer than 4 weeks requires appearance before the licensing authority for that approval. Okay, so we recently had an instance too where unfortunately one of our establishments in Barnstable Village had a fire. And we completely understand those circumstances, but that individual had to reach out and write to us and say, look, our establishment underwent some damage, and we're going to be closed. Those are just things that we need to know, because the ABCC will then come and ask us and say, XYZ shut down, why? We want to have that information handy. Okay, so renewals are going to be handled like they were last year. Is Gail still here? I'm going to call you out, Gail, because Gail was my first the first individual to apply this year in our new database, and if I'm going to embarrass you a little bit, that she was trepidatious about it, but she did it and succeeded, and I kind of use her as my, if Gail can do it, anybody can do it, because she was right on. So we're using the same system as last year. It's the same system you're using for building permits, health permits. What's going to happen, you're going to get an email from me with the ABCC renewal form. You're going to reach out to your insurance agent, get that certificate of insurance, and a workers' compensation affidavit. That affidavit is actually required by the state, and we are mandated to have it for all licensed businesses. Those 3 easy pieces, put you on your consent agenda, get your approval. I think the one change that may have kind of occurred since I've come on board, all of the paperwork, including payment moving forward, will only be taken in the month of November. So you will get an email from me probably October 31st at 10 o'clock at night saying tomorrow is your day. You have 30 days to apply, and full payment will be required by November 30th as well. So please keep that in mind as you plan your finances for the rest of the year. You must have a current food permit issued by the health department if you're in the process of your renewal permit with them. I just want to know that you're in the works with them. And the building department will also be making sure that you have a current certificate of inspection on file. So if you have any questions about those, I have access to their databases. You are welcome to call them. If you know renewal season's coming up, these are the 3 things that you're going to need to have in order. And I would even speak to seasonals are going to operate the same way. So seasonals kind of had one more season of doing it the old way, but they're going to be on the OpenGov permitting system next year as well. So again, health permit, certificate of inspection, we want to make sure that we have those documents in place so we don't hold you up. And I'm sure you're all happy that I am done. I'm going to pass this off to Chris, I think, for now, is this would be you. So thank you for listening. This is, I like to do other parts of my job. This is a little more nerve-wracking, but thank you for your patience. All right, you're all good?
I wasn't even going to use the PowerPoint. Because I haven't even seen what you put down. Can do that. All right, so I'm not going to use the PowerPoint. The majority of you have been doing this job forever and ever and ever, and you're sitting next to somebody who can help you. I know that the network that you have here is incredible, and I'm going to give you really the snapshot of what you need. One, you have your licensing book. That's going to be your guideline. Anything that you need to know about running your licensed establishment in the town of Barnstable is going to be in that book. 2, you have the access of reaching out to the ABCC. They have an incredible website, and use it. That website is going to give you all the guidelines that you need as far as what the state tells you you can and you can't do in running a licensed establishment. Jamie was great with his presentation here about giving you some facts and some numbers and whatnot. But in all honesty, if you're not using those resources that are provided to you, that's a problem in the first place. So please use those resources. As far as compliance checks goes, it's very simple, at least for me, and how we're going to do it here in the town of Barnstable. 1, make sure that you have your signage proper. You have to have your licenses up. You need to have your warning signs up. You need to have your capacities up. I know they already talked about this a little bit, but a lot of places, believe it or not, you walk in and the license that's posted on the wall is 3 years old. They have the new one. It's in a desk someplace. They're not operating unlicensed. They just don't have it posted. So please put those things up. The other thing that I'm going to look for is I want to see that you're holding a binder. It doesn't necessarily have to be bound. It doesn't have to be 3-ring. It can be in a folder. But I want to see you having some sort of file put together that has all of your licenses in one place. So if I walk in, I can ask you, hey, where's your log? What log? Your crowd manager's log. Well, I have to have you have over 100 people. You need a crowd manager's log. So where's your crowd manager certificate? Where's your tip certificate? Where's your logbook? And then you should have a copy of your other licenses in that one folder. If you have that, we don't have to go searching through your restaurant to look at some wall that you have in the back corner where you put them up 10 feet high so that no one can see them anyway. We can just sit there and talk to you at your front desk and say, all right, you have everything here. It's in order. That's great. Thank you. At that point, I'm going to walk around a little bit. I'm going to take a look to make sure that nobody is overly intoxicated, that it doesn't look like there's a 13-year-old sitting at your bar, and that the person who's walking out the door isn't stumbling going to their car. It's all common sense when it comes to what we're doing here. People that are in your establishment, whether they're in your establishment for an hour or they're in your establishment for 5 minutes, you own them. They're your responsibility. When they leave your establishment, if they're hanging out in your parking lot, you still own them. They're your responsibility. If they're standing in line to get into your establishment, you own them. They're your responsibility. On the sidewalk on Main Street when they leave, again, they're yours. If they're waiting to get into your establishment in your line, or they just left your establishment and they're hanging out with their friends and they're partying on the sidewalk, it is still going to be your responsibility. I think some people have the idea that once someone leaves their establishment, oops, it's up to the police department, it's all theirs, or they're going to the next place, so it's not my business anymore. If you all sit there and take the opinion that, hey, we own them, you're all going to have a lot easier time dealing with the people that are leaving your establishment, maybe not doing the right thing after they leave. We talked about the compliance checks a little bit. Yes, we are going to do underage compliance checks. We have done the legal ad for those. That would have come out, was it in December? All right, so we did December for this year. So our legal obligation has been satisfied. So you may see people coming in to do checks. Again, same as the ABCC. We're not going to send in somebody who looks like they're 30 years old. We're not going to send anybody in that has a fake ID. We are not going to send somebody in that smells like they've been drinking of alcohol already. We're not trying to trick you. Everyone knows what the rules are. You can't serve to somebody who is under 21. You cannot serve to somebody who is obviously impaired and not in control of themselves. That's what we're looking for. That's what you should be looking for. As far as your bouncers go, or your doorman, or your security, whatever you're calling them, they are there to keep order in your establishment. They're there to make sure that the people that are patronizing you are following your rules, and that's what they should be doing. As far as them putting hands on people, that's what they should not be doing. If they need to defend themselves, if they need to defend a patron, and there is going to be a risk of injury, we get it. If they're sitting there saying, hey, you're out of here, and they grab them by the neck and start dragging them through the bar, they just committed an assault and battery. If they do that, that person who is intoxicated probably has some issues with the police department, but so does your establishment, and so does that bouncer, or doorman, or security, whatever you want to call them. Bottom line is, unless somebody's getting hurt, unless that bouncer is in risk of getting hurt, do not have them putting their hands on people. As some of your training, you should be looking at these people that are working for you and making sure that they have the ability to have a conversation with someone, even an intoxicated person, to try to get them to leave reasonably. If all else fails, then yes, call the police department. If somebody is refusing to leave and somebody is causing a battery, assault and battery in your establishment, and you are unable to take care of it by yourselves, call us. Let us help you. Same things go with that underage person. You know what? If that person is underage or you think that they give you a fake ID, you have absolutely every right in the world to refuse them entrance. So do so. If they refuse to leave and they're causing a problem and they are still like outside yelling, screaming, whatever, then call us. If they leave, you don't necessarily have to call us for each and everything. We are not running your business. You are running your business. We are there to support you. We are there to help you, but it is not our job to check every ID for you. And I say this because every once in a while we get that. If that person refuses to leave and they're causing a problem, let us come help. We are there for that, and we want to do that. I'm going to tease a little bit on something that Erin had showed in her PowerPoint, and this is 100% because she is way nicer than I am. So a lot of the things that she was talking about was, we ask, and you should. I'm going to translate into must, you may not, cannot, will not. Okay, so when she's being kinder and saying, well, we would ask that you don't do this, it basically means the law says you can't do it, don't do it. Because when I come to do a compliance check, I'm going to sit there and say, hey, you know what, in that training, we showed you the things that you could do or you couldn't do. There's no reason that you should be doing this. The other thing that I want to also talk about is what she said concerning technology. And believe me, I'm coming to this kicking and screaming myself. I actually have this brand new little tablet that they gave me. So now when I go to my compliance checks, instead of sitting there with my notepad and just writing things down, I can actually walk around with the tablet. And as she said, I can actually look at the building department stuff, the Board of Health stuff, I can look at the fire department stuff and the police stuff, and can check it off on my tablet right there. If I sit there and say, hey, this room looks like it's overcrowded, and what's your capacity? And if no one has the answer, I can actually pull up your permit right there and give you the answer. Then I'm going to have a problem with you for not knowing the answer. We've had that a couple of times last summer where we would come up to the doorman and ask them, hey, how many people are inside? Well, I don't know. Well, what's your capacity? Well, I don't know. Where's your manager? Somewhere. If you're at the door, you need to know what the capacity is. You need to know how many people are in your establishment, and you sure as hell better know where your manager is. And that's one of the other things that I will have as a pet peeve of my own. We understand that owners cannot be on property 24 hours a day. We understand that managers can't be on property 24 hours a day. But if your staff doesn't know how to get in touch with somebody who's in charge, when it's the police department, the building department, Board of Health, fire department, or even just a patron asked to speak to a manager, that's a major problem. Please make sure that you have somebody who is designated as the person in charge on your property at all times during your operation. It's required by rules and regulations. It's required by the ABCC. It shouldn't be a hard ask. If somebody who is the manager had to run down to the store for a half hour, we get that. But if 3 hours later and I come back and they're still not there, that's a problem. So really, those are the biggest things that I have from the experience in doing this the last several years. Like I said, I've talked with many of you over the last couple of years. I'm sure that I'll get to know others. And at this point, I'm going to open it up for questions in 1 second. One thing that we hadn't done yet, and sort of done on purpose, I just wanted to let you know and to thank the members of our licensing authority. They are sitting in the crowd today. They are here participating in this program. And I know I'm going to speak for them in a positive way when they are thrilled to see so many of you here for this program. So thank you. With that, do we have any questions?
On the cleaning, you can't have somebody in there cleaning after an hour from when you close?
So if you close down your establishment and you're in there cleaning, and this comes from experience, this comes from past bad behaviors. If you're going to be there for more than an hour, you are required to either tell the licensing authority ahead of time or call the police department, believe it or not, to let them know that you're going to be there past an hour. And the reason that is there were several bars that would sit there with 10, 12 people hanging out at 3 o'clock in the morning, having beers and saying that they were staff and cleaning. That's how that came about.
I was more referring to when people come in the morning to clean.
No, we're not talking about outside cleaning agencies that are coming in at 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning. We're talking about staff that are cleaning up the bar, doing their prep for the next day. And really, it came to be this way because you might have 3 staff members that were hanging out with their boyfriends, their girlfriends, their friends, and that party just continued until 3, 4 o'clock in the morning when there was no reason for them to be there anymore other than to continue the party. You got nothing for me? Come on.
Tip certification,
Yes.
everybody, or someone who is certified with someone who isn't, or everyone across the board at all times?
Do you want to answer that one?
I mean, anyone who is handling alcohol, ideally anyone who's handling alcohol. your servers. It's a 3-year certification, so once, if you can do it online, you don't have to go anywhere. It can be part of their onboarding, your onboarding process, that this is a requirement. I've had someone on a special one day fight me on it. And I said, I'm not, I can't put you in front of the board. You need to have that certification. And she came back and said, wow, I can't believe all that I thought I knew that I didn't know. So it benefits you, it benefits your customers, your business. And I guess, I just wanted to really touch on, I know we had a question about IDs, so there is an ID checking guide that you can purchase online, which might make it a little easier. And then, do you want to touch on that at all?
So one of the local establishment owners reached out to me a couple of weeks ago and was asking about the ID books, and also said, hey, you know what? I found this little one-page sheet that I had from years ago, and it has some great information on it for people that are working the door. And he was kind enough to share that with me. Thank you, Shay. So what we did was we took some parts out of it that are more pertinent to what's going on now. Some of it had some old codes in it, and we couldn't confirm whether those codes were still the same. So we cut those out, but we did laminate some of those copies and put them at the back of the room for you. And then what Aaron was talking about is the ID checking guide. The 2023 books are out. I would suggest that you purchase those books and make them available to your managers and to your staff at the door. In years past, we actually have been able to provide those because there was grant money out there for that. This year, unfortunately, we don't have that, but we are still searching for different funding sources to do things like that for you when available. You can find it right online to purchase those ID checking guides. Tip certification, I know a lot of places will actually do it on site if they have a large enough staff. I know in the past, some of the restaurants and bars would get together and they would do stuff on site together, and you can do it online. The online course is inexpensive and it's fairly quick. Same thing with crowd managers. You can do that online through the state of Massachusetts. I know there are other companies as well, but none of this takes a whole bunch of time, and it's not a bunch of money, and it is required. So we would suggest that you pursue those options as well. Yes.
I'm in the hotel, as a manager in the hotel, we have a bar that's all open, When we close at 10 o'clock, say, and all the guests are finished, we shut down everything else, are they allowed to still stay in this, even though it's all open?
So I'm going to give you the legal answer. All right, so the legal answer is if any place in your establishment is licensed, the only alcohol that can be consumed and can be served in that area is through the licensee. That's the answer I'm going to give you. I guess on pouring licenses, I will bring up one other thing. I know that sometimes licensed establishments do ask for permission to have pouring licenses because they want to hold events that are outside the scope of their license. That is allowed, but just because you have a pouring license on premise, even if they're all alcohol, if it goes outside of the scope of your original license, you do need to make application to the licensing authority for approval to hold this event, which is going to have participants and patrons outside of your normal scope. I'll use an example of, well, no, but that's not one, that's, yeah. We do have an establishment in town that is going to be holding an event coming up, and they want to expand into their parking lot. That is permissible as long as they apply to have that event in the parking lot. It is basically 2 separate licenses, so you're not covered by the license from your building. You're covered by the additional pouring license which you've applied for and have been approved for, and you have to follow the restrictions that that license gives you. So what I would say is if you do an event in your parking lot and you ask for a beer and wine license, even though your restaurant has an all alcohol license, outside you can only serve beer and wine. You cannot have all alcohol outside. If you wanted to have all alcohol outside, then you would have to put that on your application for that event, for the outside portion. Is that as clear as mud? All right. Any other questions? I'm liking this.
It's because they all know the answers.
All right.
right? All right, I just want to thank you all for coming. This is, speaking is not my thing, so I appreciate your patience. I am always a resource. I kind of always lead with, even if it's not my department, if I can find you the right department, I will. So please use me as your resource for anything relating to the town, and I'm happy to kind of give you the contact information that you're going to need. Again, reminder of the blue books. I will put a link to the ID checking guide. Everyone's going to get an email with a link to this video. This will be up on our website. So if anyone that you work with wasn't able to attend and wants to view it at a later date, we will have it online. And again, I'll make sure you have an ID checking guide. Our laminator was acting up. So I did run out of the ID, the kind of cheat sheet, but I'm happy to provide one for anyone who did not get one and would like one. Just send me an email and I'll make sure I get it to you. And I think that's about it. Thank you all for coming. This is an amazing turnout. Yeah, thank you.